What if a simple, unremarkable man could rise from the shadows of history to shape the eternal city itself? Vespasian was not born into greatness. No crown, no privileged lineage, no golden cradle. He came from a modest family in Reate, a quiet town far removed from the glittering palaces of Rome. And yet, in a world obsessed with status and bloodlines, this man would carve a path so extraordinary that centuries later, the stones of the Colosseum still whisper his name. The mystery of his ascent begins not with power, but with the subtle sparks of ambition hidden in the ordinary. A boy with no crown, no inherited privileges, grew up in a world that valued pedigree above all. While the children of senators played in marble halls, Vespasian learned the lessons of resilience and humility in simpler surroundings. He observed Rome from afar, hungry for recognition but careful to avoid the traps of arrogance. In these early years, a pattern formed. He thrived in situations others would overlook, paying attention to the unnoticed details, the tiny threads of power and influence. This ability to see opportunity where others saw routine would later define his ascent. The soldier emerges in ways history rarely records. Vespasian joined the Roman army, not as a prodigy, but as a disciplined, methodical young man. Campaigns in Britannia tested not just his courage, but his intellect. Each encounter taught him lessons no scroll or tutor could offer. The art of leadership under relentless pressure, the subtle diplomacy of commanding men who might fear or envy him, and the delicate balance between honor and survival. Even in battle, he understood that real power was never about brute strength alone. It was about the ability to bend circumstances to one's will without breaking the loyalty of those who followed. Rome's chaos beckons, and history's storms are rarely kind. Under Nero, decadence and misrule spread like wildfire, leaving a vacuum ripe for the ambitious. Vespasian's careful, measured rise through the military placed him directly at the eye of this imperial storm. While others hesitated, he acted strategically, observing allies and rivals alike. Whispers began to circulate. Could this unassuming man, raised outside the elite circles, truly ascend to the pinnacle of power? Could a commoner navigate the treacherous waters of Roman politics where one misstep could mean exile or death? Every shadow in the Senate, every rumor in the Forum, hinted that his destiny might already be written in the cracks of history. A destiny forged in fire is never gentle. Rome's streets, halls, and arenas would not hand power freely. Vespasian had to master not just armies, but the human heart, the fears, desires, and secrets that drove men to betray or obey. He learned quickly. Empathy mixed with cunning, patience blended with ruthlessness, is the recipe for survival at the top. By the time he would step onto the imperial stage as the first Flavian emperor, Vespasian was already a figure shrouded in mystery. How did a man so ordinary rise to command Rome itself? And what dark secrets, ambitions, and intrigues would remain hidden behind the monumental glory he was destined to leave behind? The Colosseum, the enduring symbol of his reign, would eventually tell part of the story, but the man himself and the shadows of his ascent remain a puzzle that continues to captivate history's imagination. What does it take for an ordinary man to become extraordinary in a world ruled by blood and ambition? For Vespasian, the answer lay in the dust of distant battlefields where survival was measured in strategy, cunning, and sometimes sheer luck. From the rolling hills of Britannia to the burning deserts of Judea, he would be tested in ways that would shape not only his career, but the destiny of Rome itself. The mystery of his rise is hidden in these trials, where every victory carried whispers of secrets, ambition, and the shadows of power. The march begins with the long, grueling campaigns in Britannia. Here, Vespasian's resilience was forged. Unlike some generals who relied on birthright, he learned to inspire loyalty through action, through careful observation of his men, and through clever, sometimes ruthless tactics. Each skirmish in the muddy forests, each ambush by tribes who knew the land better than he did, became a test of not just military skill, but patience, intuition, and psychological insight. The soldier who understood fear and how to use it was the one who could survive Rome's unforgiving military machine. Fire of Judea awaited him later, and it would be a trial unlike any other. The Jewish rebellion in 66 CE was a storm of violence, religion, and politics intertwined. Vespasian, sent with his legions to quell the uprising, discovered the brutal calculus of conquest. Cities burned, armies shattered, and thousands of lives were lost. Yet, through the chaos, he demonstrated a peculiar combination of pragmatism and strategy. He avoided unnecessary losses when possible, but he could wield overwhelming force when required. Every decision, every order hinted at a deeper understanding of human nature, an ability to anticipate not only enemy movements, but the fears and loyalties of his own men. Whispers in Rome traveled faster than legions could march. While Vespasian fought on distant soil, the capital was a powder keg of intrigue. Nero's misrule had left the empire unsteady, and rumors of a capable commander abroad reached senators and rivals alike. Who was this man climbing the ranks without noble birth, yet commanding legions with unmatched authority? Could someone so unassuming become a threat to the throne? Every letter, every report from the front lines carried hints of suspicion and fascination. Rome was watching, and the seeds of mystery about Vespasian's true ambition were quietly being sown. Lessons written in blood and fire are not easily forgotten. Vespasian emerged from these campaigns hardened, wiser, and more attuned to the subtle games of power. His experiences in Britannia and Judea were not just about territory, they were training grounds for the delicate art of ruling an empire. He learned that strength alone was insufficient. Influence, perception, and the calculated use of fear and respect were just as vital. By the time he would eventually turn his eyes toward Rome itself, Vespasian had mastered the balance between soldier and statesman, between brute force and cunning subtlety. Yet, the mystery remained. Was his ambition driven solely by duty to Rome, or by a hunger that even he could not fully acknowledge? Every victory, every harsh lesson, carried echoes of the man he was becoming, and the empire he would one day command. What happens when an empire loses its anchor? In the year 69 CE, Rome was a city teetering on the edge of madness. Nero was dead, and the imperial throne became a prize for anyone bold or ruthless enough to claim it. In just 12 months, the empire saw 4 emperors rise and fall, leaving a trail of blood, betrayal, and whispered secrets. Amid this chaos, Vespasian quietly maneuvered, observing the mistakes of others and preparing to seize a destiny many believed was beyond his reach. The mystery of power often hides in patience. Emperors fall like leaves in a storm. Galba, Otho, Vitellius, each claimed the throne, each met a violent end. The streets of Rome were alive with rumors of assassination and conspiracy, and the Senate was paralyzed by fear. Amid the chaos, alliances shifted in the blink of an eye. Every soldier, every senator, every ambitious noble had to choose sides carefully. And far from the capital, Vespasian's legions in Judea observed the turmoil. The world seemed to unravel, yet within that unraveling lay opportunity for the careful, cunning and relentless. The shadow of opportunity falls on those who wait and watch. Vespasian did not rush to Rome. Instead, he consolidated power with calculated patience, strengthening his legions and ensuring loyalty through discipline, rewards, and quiet authority. While rivals quarreled and fell, he positioned himself as a stabilizing force, someone Rome could turn to if they dared. Letters traveled between generals and senators, painting a picture of a man both ordinary and extraordinary. Behind every military report, every diplomatic correspondence, whispers of ambition and mystery swirled. Could this relatively unknown general truly rise to the ultimate prize, unseen by most of Rome? Rivals blinded by hubris never see the quiet ascent of a determined soul. Vitellius, enthroned with pomp and indulgence, underestimated the meticulousness of Vespasian's strategy. Otho, driven by impatience, acted rashly. Galba, too rigid and suspicious, failed to inspire loyalty. Each fall served as a lesson, each betrayal an insight. Vespasian observed not only tactics but temperament, learning how easily fear, arrogance, and desire could crumble an empire from within. In the shadows, his legend began to grow, an almost invisible thread weaving toward the crown. The storm before the calm is often the deadliest. By the end of the year, Vespasian moved decisively. His legions marched toward Rome, his strategy flawless, his reputation a mixture of respect and rumor. The city that had witnessed the rapid collapse of emperors now braced itself for a man no one had expected to conquer it, not by brute force alone, but through intelligence, patience, and unshakable resolve. The mystery of Vespasian's rise was no longer in question. It was unfolding in real time, a story of ambition cloaked in shadows, patience, and cunning. Yet even as he approached the throne, whispers lingered. What would the first Flavian emperor truly bring? Stability or new secrets waiting to be unearthed? How does a new dynasty rise from the ashes of chaos? As 69 CE drew to a close, Rome was exhausted, trembling, and desperate for stability. Vespasian, once a soldier of humble origins, now stood poised to claim the ultimate prize, the imperial throne. But ascending to power was only the beginning. Establishing a dynasty meant navigating treacherous waters of loyalty, fear, and the unending shadows of intrigue. The birth of the Flavian dynasty was as much about careful strategy as it was about ambition, and the mysteries behind its foundation remain as compelling as the Colosseum it would later inspire. The crown is claimed, but the empire is still a powder keg. Vespasian's legions had marched on Rome with precision, but victory required more than military might. Senators, generals, and citizens alike needed reassurance, or manipulation, to accept this new ruler. Vespasian's approach was subtle. He blended firmness with calculated generosity, rewarding loyalty while isolating potential threats. Behind every handshaken decree, whispers of strategy floated like smoke. How did a man of common birth convince Rome to follow him without bloodshed at every turn? The answer lay in the careful construction of perception, the hidden art of power. Forging alliances became an essential act of survival. The new emperor understood that even victory could be fragile if old families felt slighted or overlooked. Vespasian strategically positioned loyal generals in key provinces, while subtly neutralizing rivals through politics rather than open warfare. His ability to balance intimidation with diplomacy allowed him to consolidate control more smoothly than most feared possible. Yet, behind the celebrations and ceremonies, the mysteries persisted. What compromises had he made in the shadows? What secret deals ensured the loyalty that appeared so seamless to the public eye? The Flavian vision extended beyond mere survival. Vespasian understood that an enduring dynasty required legitimacy, prestige, and a symbol that would mark his reign for centuries. He sought not only to stabilize Rome, but also to leave a legacy that would overshadow the chaos of the previous year. Every political decision, every strategic marriage, every military assignment was part of a broader, calculated plan. Yet the real story of the Flavian rise is partly hidden in what was never recorded: how ambition, secrecy, and calculated risks intertwined to form a dynasty that promised permanence but was still vulnerable to intrigue. A dynasty cloaked in mystery is often the most powerful. By the time Vespasian secured his position, the Flavian name was known, respected, and feared. His reign brought relative stability to a Rome that had known only turmoil, yet the shadows of its birth lingered. Every move carried the weight of strategy, every decree reflected lessons learned from chaos, and every victory reminded the empire that power was earned as much through cunning as through force. The story of the Flavian dynasty's birth is not just one of conquest, but of subtle genius and calculated mystery, the kind that leaves history whispering long after the emperor himself has passed. What does it take to build a monument that defies time? For Vespasian, the Colosseum was more than just stone and mortar. It was a statement of power, a testament to Rome's resilience, and a symbol of a dynasty rising from chaos. But behind every towering arch and carved relief lay stories of mystery, ambition, and human cost. The amphitheater that still dominates the Roman skyline was not merely entertainment. It was a stage for politics, fear, and secrets few would ever fully uncover. A vision from the ashes of Nero's Domus Aurea inspired the project. Rome had been scarred by decadence and chaos, and Vespasian sought to reclaim the city for the people and for his dynasty. Using funds seized from the spoils of the Jewish wars, he began construction in the heart of Rome. But the project was not merely architectural, it was psychological. Every spectator in the arena would witness the might of the Flavian dynasty. Every stone laid whispered a message. Rome was resilient, the dynasty was strong, and Vespasian's rise was no accident. Yet, beneath this grandeur, lurked the shadow of those who had labored and suffered to make it possible. Blood and stone often share the same foundation. Thousands of slaves, prisoners of war, and skilled laborers toiled under grueling conditions. Many perished during construction, their names lost to history. The Colosseum was built to celebrate Rome's victories, but it also concealed human suffering in its massive walls. Vespasian understood the paradox. The monument's beauty depended on sacrifice, yet the very lives spent building it remained invisible to the empire he ruled. It was a masterstroke of perception, a place of wonder that also masked a darker reality, one that still sparks fascination and speculation centuries later. A stage for mystery and political theater, the Colosseum also served as a tool of control. Gladiatorial games and public spectacles demonstrated the emperor's power, binding citizens to the Flavian rule through awe and fear. Vespasian cleverly intertwined entertainment with subtle propaganda, creating an environment where loyalty was inspired, not coerced. Behind every triumphal procession and every gladiator's fight lay a carefully curated story of dominance, legitimacy, and mystery. Some whispered that the amphitheater's construction concealed secret passages, hidden chambers, and symbols of the Flavian rise, architectural enigmas that have fueled historians' fascination for centuries. Legacy in stone is eternal, yet it is never fully understood. The Colosseum remains an iconic symbol of Rome, yet its walls hold secrets that historians still debate. How much did politics influence its design? Were there hidden messages in its architecture? And what did Vespasian truly hope to communicate to future generations? While millions admire its arches and scale, few grasp the complex interplay of power, ambition, and mystery that it represents. The Colosseum stands not only as a testament to engineering, but as a silent witness to the ambitions, sacrifices, and calculated brilliance of the emperor who dared to build an empire in stone and mystery in the heart of Rome. What does an emperor laugh at when the weight of the world rests on his shoulders? Vespasian was a man of iron will, a master of strategy, and the first of the Flavian Dynasty, but he was also unexpectedly human. Known for his sharp wit and earthy humor, he navigated the treacherous corridors of power with laughter as both shield and weapon. Beneath the grandeur of empire, his humanity offered a rare glimpse of the man behind the legend, while also concealing mysteries that history has never fully unraveled. Laughter in the palace was rare, but Vespasian wielded it skillfully. Stories tell of his playful jabs at senators, his sarcastic remarks at pompous courtiers, and even jokes whispered at the very edge of decorum. These moments were not mere frivolity, they were tools, subtle instruments to gauge loyalty, deflect tension, and remind both allies and rivals that the emperor was unpredictable. Humor in Vespasian's hands became a lens through which he read human nature, a skill that proved just as powerful as any army he commanded. The man behind the crown was surprisingly relatable. Vespasian enjoyed simple pleasures, a stroll through Rome, a modest meal, a joke shared with his children. These glimpses of ordinary life were not signs of weakness. They were carefully curated moments that made him approachable, grounding him amid the vast machinery of empire. Yet, beneath this approachable exterior, shadows lingered. How much of his public humanity was genuine and how much was deliberate, a strategic mask concealing the calculating mind that had conquered chaos and built a dynasty. The line between truth and performance remained tantalizingly blurred. Cleverness cloaked in humor defined Vespasian's approach to politics. He could mock without offending, tease without alienating, and redirect suspicion with a well-timed quip. Even in tense council meetings, his humor allowed him to observe reactions, measure ambition, and uncover hidden intentions. Few could guess the depths of calculation beneath the laughter. The mystery of Vespasian lies partly in these layers. The man who could joke about death, poverty, and power, while simultaneously orchestrating strategies that would shape Rome for decades. A legacy of human complexity is often hidden in stories of humor and subtlety. Vespasian's wit survives in anecdotes, inscriptions, and historical accounts, offering glimpses of an emperor who was more than conquest and construction. He reminds us that power does not erase humanity, and that humor can be a veil for genius, ambition, and even secrecy. Beneath the Colosseum's arches, beneath the proclamations of a dynasty, linger the traces of a man who laughed at life while controlling it, leaving us with a mysterious legacy. A ruler both approachable and unknowable, wise yet unpredictable, human yet larger than life. What whispers linger after an emperor takes his last breath? Vespasian, the first of the Flavian Dynasty, ruled with a mixture of iron will, cunning, and humanity. But even emperors cannot escape the finality of death. In 79 CE, as he approached the end of his life, Vespasian faced the ultimate question: how would history remember him? The answer lay not only in the monuments he left behind, the Colosseum, the stabilization of Rome, but in the mysteries and subtle choices that history often overlooks. A calm farewell marked his final days, at least according to surviving accounts. Unlike the violent deaths that claimed so many emperors before him, Vespasian faced mortality with composure and even humor. His famous remark, "Oh dear, I think I'm becoming a god," echoed both irreverence and insight. Was this just a simple reflection of personality, or a deliberate act to shape how posterity would perceive him? In the shadows of Rome, even death could be a performance, a final piece of the intricate puzzle that was Vespasian's life. Legacy carved in stone is often clearer than the man behind it. The Colosseum, still standing centuries later, is a monument not only to engineering but to ambition, strategy, and authority. Vespasian's careful cultivation of the Flavian Dynasty ensured that his sons, Titus and Domitian, would inherit both power and expectation. Yet the stones, arches, and columns speak silently, leaving historians to wonder how much of his vision was for glory, how much for stability, and how much was a subtle message to those who might follow him in the shadows of history. Mystery beyond the tomb surrounds every emperor, and Vespasian is no exception. Scholars debate his final intentions, his private thoughts, and the compromises made to secure the Flavian legacy. Did he see his dynasty as permanent, or was he acutely aware of the fragility that had claimed so many rulers before him? The gaps in the historical record allow speculation. Rumors of political maneuvering, personal grudges, and secret strategies linger like a shadow over the official narrative. Even in death, the emperor's life invites questions about power, morality, and ambition that remain unanswered. A shadow that endures is the hallmark of true influence. Vespasian's death did not mark the end of his story. It transformed into a legacy layered with achievement, human complexity, and mystery. The Flavian dynasty continued, his monuments became iconic, and the whispers of his cleverness and cunning persisted through history. The man who rose from obscurity to shape Rome left more than buildings and laws. He left enigmas, a blueprint of ambition cloaked in humanity, humor, and strategy. Even now, when we walk through the Colosseum or read accounts of his reign, the question remains: what did Vespasian truly intend, and which parts of his genius will forever remain hidden in the shadows of time? What echoes through history when a new dynasty takes root? The rise of the Flavian dynasty did more than stabilize a fractured Rome. It reshaped the empire's politics, culture, and even its architecture. Vespasian's vision extended far beyond his own reign, but, as with all power, influence is layered with intrigue, mystery, and subtle manipulation. The Flavian legacy, while celebrated in stone and ceremony, hides secrets that continue to puzzle historians. How much of Rome's new stability was genuine, and how much was orchestrated behind the scenes? A dynasty planted in chaos carries both opportunity and risk. Vespasian secured his family's hold on the throne by cultivating loyalty among generals, senators, and provincial governors. His strategic placements of allies in critical posts ensured that the Flavian grip on power was resilient. Yet beneath the surface of formal titles and honors, rumors persisted of secret negotiations, discreet threats, and quiet eliminations of potential rivals. Rome's streets and forums whispered that the apparent calm of the Flavian era might conceal a web of intrigue, one as carefully constructed as the arches of the Colosseum itself. Influence through architecture speaks louder than words. The Colosseum, the expansion of roads, and the restoration of temples were not only public works, they were statements of Flavian authority and vision. Citizens experienced the dynasty's power through spectacle and infrastructure, unknowingly absorbing lessons in loyalty, fear, and awe. Yet the very monuments designed to glorify the Flavians also hid mysteries, secret chambers, strategic layouts, and symbolic alignments that suggested deliberate messages to those who could read them. Power, Vespasian knew, is reinforced not only by force, but by perception and sometimes by puzzles woven into stone. Political mastery defined the Flavian influence as much as architecture. Vespasian and his sons navigated the delicate balance of appeasing Rome's elite while maintaining authority over the provinces. He rewarded loyalty, monitored dissent, and anticipated potential uprisings before they surfaced. Yet in every decree and campaign there remained subtle uncertainty. Were decisions motivated by pragmatism, ambition, or a calculated display of control? The very mechanisms of power were shrouded in a quiet mystery, leaving observers then and now to question the true motives behind every act of governance. A legacy of power and mystery is the mark of enduring influence. The Flavian Dynasty shaped not only the political landscape of Rome, but also the imagination of generations. Citizens celebrated stability, historians analyzed policy, and travelers marveled at monumental architecture. But few glimpsed the intricate threads of strategy, ambition, and secrecy woven through every decision. From the rise of Vespasian to the calculated reigns of Titus and Domitian, the Flavian influence continues to intrigue. Behind the public accomplishments lies a shadowy narrative of careful orchestration, human ambition, and the enduring mysteries of one family who changed Rome forever. What secrets lurk behind the grandeur of an empire? While the Flavian dynasty brought stability to Rome, not all was as serene as it appeared. Power, even when consolidated, breeds whispers, rivalries, and shadows. Beneath the triumphs of Vespasian, Titus, and Domitian, controversies simmered, some recorded in history, many concealed. The true story of Flavian rule is layered, mysterious, and often darker than the public eye could see, offering a glimpse into the precarious balance between authority and fear. Whispers in the corridors of power never fully die. Senators and nobles murmured about the Flavians' rapid consolidation of authority, suspecting secret deals, hidden punishments, and subtle threats that eliminated opposition quietly. While Vespasian had earned loyalty through competence and discipline, some questioned whether stability was built on fear rather than genuine support. The subtle manipulations behind closed doors created an atmosphere of uncertainty, an invisible tension that would linger throughout the dynasty, shaping perceptions for generations. Tales of indulgence and intrigue shadowed the younger Flavians, particularly Titus and Domitian. Titus, celebrated for his victories and generosity, was rumored to wield his charm strategically, while Domitian's rule became increasingly autocratic, punctuated by purges and secret executions. Chroniclers hint at betrayals and power struggles that never reached public forums, leaving gaps in the historical record. These hidden controversies raise enduring questions. Which acts were justified governance and which were calculated moves to secure fear-driven loyalty? The line between leadership and tyranny often blurred under the Flavian gaze. Mysteries of wealth and conquest deepened the intrigue. The spoils of war, especially from Judea, funded monumental projects, but how these resources were allocated remained opaque. Rumors suggest manipulation of finances, favoritism in appointments, and discreet rewards for compliance, measures that reinforced authority while keeping dissent at bay. Even within the military, loyalty was constantly tested, sometimes with veiled threats rather than overt battles. Rome celebrated the dynasty's accomplishments, but the undercurrents of secret maneuvering and veiled coercion remained largely invisible, leaving historians to piece together fragments of a carefully hidden narrative. The shadow of secrecy is what gives power its mystique. Flavian rule, while outwardly impressive, rested on a foundation of both brilliance and enigma. Monuments, festivals, and public generosity projected strength, but the unseen machinations, assassinations avoided, conspiracies quelled, alliances manipulated, crafted a different story. History remembers the dynasty's triumphs, yet the hidden controversies continue to captivate, suggesting that the full measure of Flavian power is shrouded in shadows. Rome's grand stage had been illuminated, but behind the curtains, mysteries persisted, an enduring testament to the complex, enigmatic nature of empire. What unseen hand guides an empire's legions to victory? The Flavian dynasty did not only rule Rome through politics and architecture, they commanded power through meticulously crafted military strategy. From Vespasian's campaigns in Judea to Titus's campaigns against rebellion, their military genius was as much about cunning, deception, and secrecy as it was about brute force. Beneath the banners, the legions marched not only to conquer, but to execute plans layered with mystery and intelligence that history has only partially revealed. A general's eyes see more than the battlefield. Vespasian, unlike many emperors before him, relied on observation, intuition, and understanding of human behavior. He studied both allies and enemies, anticipating moves before they were made. In Judea, his campaigns were marked by patience and precision. Sieges were carefully calculated, supply lines managed with subtle ingenuity, and morale of his soldiers maintained through a mixture of respect and discipline. Every decision left faint traces, hints of a mind that considered not just victory, but the long-term consolidation of power. The true depth of these strategies often remains hidden behind the official chronicles, leaving historians to guess at the silent calculus of conquest. Deception in plain sight became a hallmark of Flavian military doctrine. The use of misinformation, strategic withdrawals, and surprise maneuvers created illusions that confounded enemies while ensuring minimal exposure of weaknesses. Vespasian's ability to manipulate perceptions extended beyond the battlefield. Rival generals, Roman senators, and provincial governors often underestimated him, unaware of the careful networks of loyalty he had woven across the empire. These subtle strategies created a web of control that few recognized at the time, adding layers of mystery to the Flavian approach to warfare. Legacy etched in campaigns is often quieter than monuments. Titus' campaigns in Judea, culminating in the siege of Jerusalem, were brutal yet executed with strategic foresight that ensured Rome's dominance. The success of these campaigns cemented Flavian authority and demonstrated the dynasty's military mastery. Yet questions remain. How much of the strategy was influenced by intelligence gathered in secrecy, and how much relied on unpredictable battlefield decisions? The veil of history keeps these answers just out of reach, suggesting that the Flavians' military genius included a careful orchestration of perception as much as action. Mystery behind the legions defines the enduring fascination with Flavian rule. Soldiers marched, victories were celebrated, and rebellions crushed, but the hidden mechanisms behind each maneuver remain elusive. The dynasty's control relied not just on armies, but on secrecy, loyalty, and manipulation of fear and expectation. Rome's citizens may have cheered, but few understood the silent strategies shaping every victory. In this shadowy intersection of military power and political acumen lies the true genius of the Flavians, a blend of brilliance, patience, and enigmatic foresight that continues to captivate historians and storytellers alike. What unseen forces guide an empire from stability to dominance? The Flavian dynasty did not only wield power through armies and monuments, they governed with a blend of strategy, subtlety, and secrecy that few could perceive. Vespasian and his successors understood that control was as much about perception and manipulation as it was about laws and decrees. The mysteries of Flavian governance lie in decisions that shaped Rome quietly, often hidden behind layers of diplomacy, alliances, and calculated restraint. The art of subtle control defined Vespasian's approach. Rather than rule through terror alone, he cultivated loyalty and dependence through rewards, appointments, and careful oversight of provincial governors. Senators and magistrates were monitored, not always overtly, but through discreet channels of information. Every action carried multiple layers of purpose, to stabilize, to impress, and to subtly remind citizens and elites alike that the Flavian authority was both omnipresent and calculated. The mystery lies in the invisible threads connecting decree to outcome, an intricate network few outside the inner circle could fully discern. Balance between fear and favor was essential. The Flavians understood human nature, using selective intimidation alongside visible acts of generosity. Public games, monuments, and gifts reinforced popularity, while discreet punishments ensured compliance from potential dissenters. This dual approach created an environment where citizens and officials obeyed willingly, yet always aware of the emperor's watchful presence. Behind this balancing act lay secrets of influence, strategy, and careful orchestration that history hints at but never fully records. Hidden bureaucratic genius was another cornerstone of Flavian rule. Administrative reforms, tax policies, and provincial oversight were implemented with precision, often designed to reinforce control without creating overt tension. Roads, aqueducts, and grain distribution systems strengthened the empire materially while subtly increasing dependence on central authority. The effectiveness of these policies gave the Flavians a stable foundation, yet the hidden intricacies, the decisions, compromises, and potential manipulations behind them remain partially veiled, adding an enduring layer of mystery to their governance. Legacy of secrecy and power defines the Flavian imprint on Rome. By the time Vespasian's sons assumed full control, the dynasty had established an invisible yet unbreakable framework for authority. The empire was stable, monuments impressive, and citizens loyal, but beneath the surface, countless subtle strategies, discreet threats, and carefully managed perceptions ensured that control remained unquestioned. The mysteries of Flavian governance endure as a reminder. The true power of a dynasty is often hidden, flowing quietly through systems, networks, and decisions that remain invisible to those outside the emperor's shadow. Rome celebrated its stability, but the secrets that made it possible continue to fascinate and puzzle historians to this day. How does a dynasty shape the soul of an empire? The Flavians were not content with political stability alone. They sought to influence Rome's culture, traditions, and religious life. Vespasian and his sons understood that true power extended beyond laws and armies. It resided in shaping values, ceremonies, and collective memory. Yet the decisions behind these cultural and religious policies often concealed layers of strategy, secrecy, and subtle manipulation, leaving historians to ponder the hidden motives of a dynasty that left Rome transformed. Restoring faith and tradition became a priority for the Flavians. After the decadence and turmoil of Nero's rule, Rome craved stability not only in governance but in ritual and belief. Vespasian promoted traditional cults, rebuilt temples, and encouraged public ceremonies that reinforced Roman identity. Yet, behind these acts of piety, there were strategic undertones. Religion became a tool to unify citizens, legitimize the dynasty, and subtly align divine favor with Flavian authority. What appears to be devotion may also have been a carefully crafted instrument of power, an intersection of faith and strategy that shrouds the dynasty's intent in mystery. Art as influence played a subtle role in shaping Rome's perception of the Flavians. Public monuments, reliefs, and commemorative inscriptions celebrated victories, loyalty, and divine sanction. The Colosseum itself functioned as a cultural instrument, projecting both awe and the legitimacy of the dynasty. Even ceremonial coins and small votive offerings carried messages of Flavian authority, combining art with propaganda. While Rome marveled at these creations, few recognized the underlying purpose, a carefully curated cultural narrative designed to cement obedience, inspire loyalty, and ensure the dynasty's mystique endured across generations. Balancing old and new was essential. The Flavians had to honor tradition while introducing innovations that reflected their vision. Vespasian encouraged religious observances that celebrated Rome's ancient gods, but also sanctioned new rituals and games that reinforced Flavian dominance. Public spectacles, temple reconstructions, and festivals all served dual purposes: to entertain and to indoctrinate subtly. Each decision contained layers of meaning, some visible, others hidden, allowing the dynasty to maintain cultural authority while keeping an element of mystery and control. Legacy etched in culture endures longer than stone. The Flavian influence on Roman religious life and cultural practices continued to resonate long after the dynasty ended. Monuments, rituals, and public spectacles shaped both memory and identity. Yet the strategic foresight and hidden intentions behind these policies remain partly obscured. The dynasty's genius lay not only in consolidating political and military power, but in crafting a cultural and spiritual framework that strengthened loyalty, shaped perception, and left mysteries for generations to unravel. Rome celebrated stability and spectacle, but beneath it all lingered the shadowy intelligence of Flavian governance, a dynasty that ruled with both authority and enigmatic strategy. How does an emperor turn wealth into invisible power? The Flavian dynasty did more than build monuments and command armies. They reshaped the Roman economy with subtle strategies that ensured both stability and loyalty. Vespasian and his successors understood that controlling money was as critical as controlling men. Behind every tax, trade policy, and imperial treasury decision lay hidden intentions, carefully orchestrated to consolidate authority, fund grand projects, and subtly influence the empire. Weaving wealth and authority became the hallmark of Flavian strategy. Vespasian famously imposed taxes on public urinals, luxury goods, and trade, showing a practical, even humorous approach to revenue. But beyond the surface, each fiscal decision was a calculated step in strengthening the dynasty's control. By channeling funds into public works, military pay, and social programs, he fostered dependence and loyalty. The mystery lies in the unseen connections, how subtle taxation, rewards, and spending reinforced Flavian influence while leaving historians to puzzle over the precise motivations behind seemingly ordinary policies. Funding empire building required careful management of resources. The Colosseum, roads, aqueducts, and provincial infrastructure demanded enormous wealth. Yet the Flavians balanced public perception with financial reality. Wars in Judea, conquest spoils, and reallocation of wealth fueled these projects, but not without strategic secrecy. Certain expenditures and appointments remained invisible to the public eye, ensuring that economic power supported political and military dominance simultaneously. This careful orchestration of finances allowed the Flavians to strengthen their authority while minimizing the risk of dissent, a financial chess game hidden in plain sight. Manipulating markets and loyalty became subtle instruments of governance. Grain distribution, trade regulation, and state-controlled supplies served both practical and political purposes. By controlling essential resources, the Flavians could reward allies and punish potential threats without overt violence. Citizens saw benefits and grandeur, yet few recognized the hidden levers of control at play. The dynasty's economic genius was not just in collecting wealth, it lay in deploying it strategically, shaping perception, and silently reinforcing a power structure that remained largely invisible to most of Rome. Legacy hidden in coins and contracts often endures longer than monuments. The Flavians left behind a financial framework that stabilized the empire for decades, yet the strategies behind these policies remain partially obscured. From subtle taxation to targeted spending, From trade regulation to infrastructure funding, every move reflected an understanding of economics as both a practical necessity and a tool of power. Rome flourished, citizens were impressed, and historians marvel at the efficiency. But the true brilliance of Flavian economic policy lies in the invisible calculations, the hidden strategies, and the quiet control woven through the empire's wealth. What secrets simmer behind the palace walls? Power rarely travels alone. Vespasian, though a disciplined and strategic ruler, ruled within a web of family ambitions, loyalties, and rivalries that shaped the Flavian court. His household was not merely domestic, it was a center of influence, subtle manipulation, and intrigue. Every gesture, every alliance, every whispered conversation carried weight, creating mysteries that still fascinate historians today. The sons of Vespasian, Titus and Domitian, were both partners and pawns in the larger game of dynasty building. Titus, charming and celebrated, often acted in accordance with his father's careful guidance, yet even he harbored ambitions and rivalries that could unsettle the court. Domitian, more calculating and autocratic, learned quickly how to navigate both favor and fear. The relationships between father and sons, between brothers, created a dynamic full of hidden agendas, subtle competitions, and moments of alliance that could tip the balance of power. The mysteries of the court often revolve around what was said in private chambers, never fully recorded, yet critical to understanding Flavian influence. Allies and adversaries mingled freely within the palace, yet trust was scarce. Senators, generals, and advisors each played their part, some openly loyal, others silently scheming. Vespasian had to manage not just external threats, but internal calculations, ensuring that potential conspiracies were monitored and neutralized discreetly. Stories of hidden alliances, quiet betrayals, and sudden shifts in loyalty suggest that even the most ordinary interactions could carry enormous consequences. The intrigue of the Flavian court was a labyrinth, one that could elevate or destroy reputations, fortunes, and lives in the shadows of imperial authority. Marriage and family connections served as tools of power as well. Vespasian's careful arrangements strengthened political alliances, solidified loyalty among influential families, and reinforced the legitimacy of the dynasty. Yet, within these bonds lay potential danger. Personal ambitions could collide, creating tensions that required constant management. The emperor had to anticipate not just political maneuvering, but emotional and personal dynamics, turning family interactions into a subtle battlefield where influence and survival were inseparable. The mysteries of these relationships are partially hidden, known only through fragments of correspondence and rumor, leaving much to speculation. Legacy of a household shrouded in mystery often extends beyond public achievements. Vespasian's family and court became a microcosm of the empire itself. Ambition, loyalty, cunning, and fear intertwined seamlessly. Every decision, every alliance, and every personal interaction was part of the intricate strategy that ensured the dynasty endured. While history records the public triumphs of the Flavians, the private intrigues and subtle manipulations remain tantalizingly elusive. The emperor ruled from the throne, but the true game of power often unfolded in whispers, glances, and decisions made behind the palace walls, secrets that continue to captivate centuries later. How does a new dynasty win the hearts and obedience of the powerful? The Flavians understood that ruling Rome required more than armies and monuments. True authority demanded careful management of the city's elite, senators, magistrates, and influential families who could elevate or undermine the dynasty. Vespasian's strategy was subtle, precise, and often shrouded in mystery. Behind the public appearances of cooperation lay a complex web of loyalty, manipulation, and silent calculation. Balancing favor and fear became a core Flavian tactic. Vespasian rewarded loyalty with offices, wealth, and recognition, while quietly neutralizing potential threats. Senators who seemed supportive in public might have faced subtle intimidation in private. Allies were tested, and rivals watched carefully. This dual approach created an intricate dance where elites could never be certain of the emperor's true intentions. Mystery lingered in these interactions. Was generosity genuine or a calculated tool to maintain control? The answers were known only to those inside the inner circle. The power of perception guided Flavian relations with Rome's upper echelons. Public appearances, ceremonies, and speeches projected harmony and mutual respect, masking underlying tensions. By crafting an image of fair governance, the Flavians minimized open resistance while reinforcing their legitimacy. Yet the subtle manipulations, secret meetings, and unrecorded negotiations formed a hidden layer of governance that few contemporaries fully grasped. The mysteries of this elite diplomacy allowed the dynasty to shape opinion and loyalty without resorting to overt coercion. Alliances in shadow were as critical as visible support. Vespasian forged discreet partnerships with influential families, ensuring that political favors and military appointments reinforced loyalty. At the same time, he monitored dissent, intercepting plots before they could reach critical mass. These hidden networks of influence strengthened the dynasty's grip while maintaining the appearance of order and stability. Even Domitian continued this delicate balance, using fear and favor selectively to maintain the loyalty of the elite, leaving historians to speculate on the unseen mechanisms that secured Flavian dominance. Legacy of control and mystery defined the Flavian interaction with Rome's elite. The dynasty's success lay not only in military or architectural achievements, but in its ability to manipulate perception, loyalty, and influence among the most powerful citizens. Monuments and public displays impressed the masses, yet the silent strategies governing elite behavior were equally, if not more, impactful. The mystery remains how much of the dynasty's stability was due to genuine respect and how much relied on unseen calculations, subtle intimidation, and the invisible threads of power that the Flavians wove into the very fabric of Rome's upper class. Even centuries later, the answers remain elusive, a testament to their enduring political genius. How does an empire extend its invisible hand beyond its borders? The Flavian dynasty understood that Rome's strength depended not only on armies and monuments, but also on diplomacy. Vespasian and his successors carefully navigated the complex web of alliances, rivalries, and negotiations with foreign powers. Yet the full story of their diplomacy remains shrouded in mystery. Secret agreements, unrecorded negotiations, and subtle manipulations shaped the empire's reach in ways that official chronicles rarely reveal. Negotiating with unseen strings defined Flavian diplomacy. Ambassadors and envoys were dispatched with clear instructions, yet much of the work occurred in shadows. Treaties with client kingdoms, alliances with distant tribes, and truces with rebellious provinces were often accompanied by veiled threats, hidden incentives, and carefully monitored loyalty. Vespasian's approach ensured that Rome projected strength while minimizing military expenditure, a subtle orchestration of influence that required intelligence, foresight, and an understanding of human behavior few could match. The secrets of these negotiations remain tantalizingly incomplete, leaving historians to speculate on the unseen forces shaping Rome's foreign relations. Maintaining dominance without constant conquest was a hallmark of Flavian foreign policy. By combining diplomacy with selective displays of military might, the dynasty could secure borders and influence distant lands without constant warfare. Client kings were rewarded for loyalty, rebellious factions were subdued through negotiation as well as force, and trade networks were carefully monitored to reinforce Rome's economic and political sway. These subtle maneuvers, often invisible to the average citizen, ensured Rome's supremacy while creating layers of intrigue and mystery that survive in fragmentary historical accounts. Secrets behind treaties and alliances added depth to Flavian influence. Not all agreements were straightforward. Some included hidden clauses, covert obligations, and subtle threats that ensured compliance without immediate confrontation. The dynasty's envoys had to balance persuasion, intimidation, and strategic deception, skills that mirrored Vespasian's domestic governance. Few contemporaries fully grasped the sophistication of these arrangements, which allowed the Flavians to maintain authority, prevent uprisings, and subtly manipulate the political landscape beyond Rome's visible reach. Legacy of quiet power defines Flavian diplomacy. The dynasty expanded Rome's influence not merely through war, but through subtle, often secretive engagement with foreign powers. Monuments and military victories may have dazzled citizens, yet the invisible threads of treaties, alliances, and strategic negotiations ensured long-term dominance. The mysteries of these diplomatic maneuvers endure: which deals were fair, which were coercive, and which remained hidden entirely. Even centuries later, the Flavians' mastery of international strategy reminds us that power often travels quietly, in the shadows of perception, calculation, and secrecy. What power hides behind the roar of the crowd? The Flavian dynasty understood that the minds of Rome's citizens could be as influential as its legions. Public spectacles, the gladiatorial games, chariot races, and grand ceremonies were not mere entertainment. They were carefully designed psychological tools. Vespasian and his successors orchestrated events to inspire awe, loyalty, and even subtle fear, weaving a tapestry of perception that extended their control far beyond the visible stage. The crowd as a mirror reflected both loyalty and fear. By hosting lavish games in arenas like the Colosseum, the Flavians created shared experiences that reinforced social hierarchy and imperial authority. Citizens celebrated the dynasty's generosity, yet simultaneously witnessed displays of discipline and consequence that reminded them of Rome's power. The psychological impact was deliberate. Loyalty was cultivated not only through reward, but through spectacle, creating a subtle, omnipresent influence that few could resist. Behind every roar of excitement lay calculated strategy, shaping perception in ways that official records often obscure. Orchestrating emotion was central to Flavian rule. Vespasian understood that fear, excitement, and admiration could be tools of governance. The timing, scale, and content of public spectacles were meticulously planned to manipulate collective sentiment, turning citizens' attention toward grandeur while masking underlying political maneuvers. Gladiatorial combats, naval reenactments, and triumphal processions were not random acts of entertainment. They were instruments of control, reinforcing obedience, unity, and respect for the dynasty's authority. Each event held layers of psychological strategy that remain partially mysterious to historians. Symbolism in stone and action reinforced the psychological impact. Monuments, arches, and even the architectural design of arenas communicated power, permanence, and divine favor. Spectacles themselves often mirrored political or military victories, subtly reminding citizens of Rome's and the Flavians' dominance. The combination of visual cues and emotional manipulation created an environment where loyalty was both voluntary and involuntary, a blend of admiration, fear, and awe. This intersection of culture, psychology, and power highlights the dynasty's mastery in shaping public perception through spectacle. Legacy in the hearts of the masses outlives the ephemeral thrill of games. The Flavians' use of public spectacles was more than entertainment. It was a form of invisible governance, influencing thought, loyalty, and social cohesion. Monuments like the Colosseum endure, but the psychological strategies behind the cheering crowds remain partly hidden, a testament to the dynasty's ingenuity. The Flavians proved that control over perception could be as powerful as control over armies, leaving a mysterious and enduring imprint on Roman society. The roar of the crowd echoed authority, strategy, and a subtle genius that continues to fascinate historians and storytellers alike. What secrets hide behind the scales of an emperor's justice? The Flavian dynasty ruled not only with armies and spectacles, but with a judicial hand that combined law, strategy, and subtle intimidation. Vespasian and his successors understood that control over justice could shape loyalty, manipulate perception, and maintain order across the empire. Yet beneath the formal proclamations and public trials, layers of secrecy and mystery guided decisions in ways history only partially reveals. Justice as a tool extended far beyond punishment. Vespasian used the courts to enforce loyalty, reward allies, and neutralize threats, often without overt displays of force. Senators, provincial governors, and influential citizens navigated a delicate balance: support the emperor and benefit, or resist and risk subtle repercussions. Trials and legal judgments were meticulously orchestrated, combining law with political strategy, leaving behind a shadowy legacy in which justice was as much about perception and manipulation as about fairness. The subtle hand of authority guided every decision. Legal mechanisms were used to consolidate power, deter rebellion, and maintain societal hierarchy. Punishments could be both public and private, depending on the message the dynasty wished to convey. Vespasian's approach emphasized efficiency and discretion. Dissension was addressed quietly whenever possible, leaving whispers of intrigue that historians later had to piece together. The true extent of Flavian judicial strategy remains a mystery, hidden in fragments of correspondence, official records, and rumor. Balancing mercy and fear became a critical element of Flavian justice. Acts of clemency were as strategic as punishments, reinforcing loyalty and shaping public opinion. Citizens and elites learned that the emperor could reward submission and punish disobedience with equal subtlety, creating a psychological environment where compliance often seemed voluntary. Every trial, verdict, and pardon carried hidden layers of intent, calculated to ensure the dynasty's authority, while leaving observers uncertain of the full story behind the decisions. Legacy cloaked in shadows defines Flavian justice. While Rome benefited from stability and rule of law, much of the true power behind legal decisions remained invisible. The dynasty used justice as a silent instrument of control, shaping society without overt coercion. Monuments, games, and public proclamations dazzled citizens, but the hidden mechanisms of loyalty, intimidation, and strategic punishment were equally impactful. The Flavians mastered the art of ruling from behind the veil, leaving historians to wonder how many decisions were guided by principle and how many by subtle, calculated strategy that will forever remain shrouded in mystery. What whispers linger long after emperors fall? The Flavian dynasty, though celebrated for stability, conquest, and grandeur, was also surrounded by tales, rumors, and myths that blurred the line between history and legend. From secret alliances to divine omens, the stories circulating in Rome painted a portrait of a dynasty both powerful and enigmatic. These narratives reveal how perception, fear, and imagination intertwined with politics, leaving mysteries that have echoed for centuries. Whispers of ambition and intrigue were never far from the Flavian. Rumors suggested that Vespasian and his sons sometimes maneuvered behind the scenes in ways that were invisible to the public, eliminating rivals quietly or manipulating events to their advantage. Tales of secret meetings, coded messages, and discreet bribes circulated in the city, giving ordinary citizens a sense of the hidden power operating above them. While official records focused on victories and public works, the shadows of these stories hint at a dynasty that ruled as much through perception and subtle control as through open authority. Omens and divine favor colored the Flavian reputation. Legends claimed that Vespasian received signs from the gods before key decisions, and that his son's fates were foretold in mysterious dreams or celestial events. Whether true or fabricated, these stories enhanced the dynasty's mystique, creating a perception that their rule was sanctioned by higher powers. Citizens interpreted these signs with awe and caution, blurring the lines between political authority and divine destiny, and leaving a veil of mystique over every decision made in the imperial household. Scandals and whispers further complicated the Flavian image. Domitian's autocratic tendencies, Titus' private indulgences, and even Vespasian's calculated humor became subjects of gossip and exaggeration. Rumors of secret punishments, mysterious deaths, and unseen conspiracies circulated, often exaggerated by enemies or opportunists. These tales, though partially unverifiable, illustrate how mystery and fear became intertwined with power. The dynasty's public image of generosity, discipline, and stability coexisted with a hidden layer of suspicion, leaving historians and storytellers alike intrigued by what truly transpired behind closed doors. Enduring legacy of legend defines the Flavians' place in history. While their architectural feats, military victories, and governance shaped Rome materially, the stories, rumors, and myths surrounding them shaped imagination and culture. Citizens long after their reign remembered not only the emperor's accomplishments, but also the whispers of mystery, divine signs, and hidden machinations. The dynasty's impact thus exists on two planes: tangible achievements and intangible legend. The full truth may never be known, yet these shadows of rumor ensure that the Flavians continue to fascinate, bridging history, myth, and the enduring enigma of power. What endures when emperors fade into history? The Flavian dynasty left more than monuments and military victories. They left mysteries, lessons, and a legacy woven with both brilliance and shadow. Vespasian, Titus, and Domitian shaped Rome through strategy, spectacle, and subtle governance, creating an empire that thrived while keeping its deeper secrets carefully veiled. To reflect on their legacy is to peer into a world where power, perception, and mystery intertwined seamlessly. The lasting imprint of strategy defines much of the Flavian influence. Vespasian's disciplined consolidation of power, Titus's military genius, and Domitian's meticulous control over perception created an empire resilient to chaos. Yet beneath each achievement lay calculated measures often invisible to the public eye, alliances forged in secret, punishments delivered quietly, and psychological strategies that molded both elite and citizen behavior. The mystery of how they maintained control so effectively continues to fascinate, suggesting a dynasty that ruled not only through visible power, but also through invisible intelligence and foresight. Monuments as messages extended the Flavian presence far beyond their reign. The Colosseum, arches, and temples were not merely architectural marvels, they were instruments of psychological influence, symbols of authority, and reminders of the dynasty's achievements. These structures projected power, unity, and divine sanction, creating a legacy etched in stone that communicated both awe and subtle intimidation. The physical grandeur of Rome survives, yet the hidden purposes and layers of strategy embedded in these works remain partially veiled, adding an enduring sense of mystery to the dynasty's accomplishments. The human and the enigmatic coexisted in the Flavians. Vespasian's humor, Titus's generosity, and Domitian's authoritarian streak illustrate the complexity of their characters, blending public virtue with private calculation. Rumors, myths, and unseen political maneuvers surrounded each emperor, reminding us that power often carries a shadow. Their governance, culture, and diplomacy were entwined with subtlety, secrecy, and strategy, leaving historians with fragments to interpret and a sense of the dynasty's depth that goes beyond any single historical record. A legacy of mystery and influence endures as the final hallmark of the Flavians. They transformed Rome not only through law, war, and architecture, but also through unseen mechanisms that shaped loyalty, perception, and memory. Their story reminds us that the truest power of a dynasty may lie in what is unseen, in the whispers, calculations, and subtleties that govern long after emperors have passed. The Flavian dynasty remains an enigma. Its monuments stand tall, its history studied, yet its mysteries continue to captivate, inspiring awe and curiosity centuries after their reign ended. The shadows of the Flavian dynasty stretch far beyond the Colosseum, beyond military triumphs, and beyond the official histories recorded on stone and parchment. Vespasian, Titus, and Domitian ruled with strategy, spectacle, and subtle mastery, shaping Rome in ways visible to the world, and yet leaving countless mysteries behind. From secret alliances to psychological games with the public, from hidden economic maneuvers to whispered court intrigues, the Flavians controlled perception as carefully as power itself. They understood that real dominion isn't just won through armies or monuments. It's sustained in the mind, the rumor, the awe, and the quiet loyalty of those under the emperor's gaze. This journey through the Flavian era shows us that history is rarely as simple as triumphs and failures. The dynasty's genius lay in blending strategy, spectacle, and subtle influence, creating an empire that could survive chaos, maintain loyalty, and leave an indelible mark on Rome's psyche. If the hidden stories, whispered intrigues, and shadowed strategies of the Flavians captivated you tonight, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Every week we uncover more mysteries from the depths of history, untold tales, enigmatic emperors, and the secrets behind the monuments you thought you knew. Share this journey with a friend who loves history, dipped in mystery, and dive deeper into the shadows of the past with us. Next time on About Mystery, we follow Titus, the son of Vespasian, whose hands completed the Colosseum and whose calm presence helped soothe Rome after the devastating eruption of Mount Vesuvius. From triumphs to tragedy, Titus's story will reveal how a son of the Flavian dynasty balanced power, grief, and the unending gaze of history itself. Prepare to step into the heart of Rome's spectacle, disaster, and human drama. Only here on About Mystery.